Hey, how's it going? Today we have the M8 CrossUp, and this is FightBox's version of HitBox's CrossUp controller. So here we have it with a bit of foam on either side of the controller and a lot of plastic wrap to go around it. Here it comes with a USB-B cable so that you can connect it to your computer or your console. You have the option between the standard Japanese SANWA lever or a Korean lever. Here I have it with the Korean lever option, so it comes with this bag to assemble it. Inside the bag you get a Phillips head screwdriver, the bat top, along with the dust cover and 2 actuators. And here's a better look of what comes packaged. Here's how it looks outside of the plastic wrap, and next up I'll show you how to assemble the Korean lever. Alright, so now I'll show you how to assemble the Korean lever, and all the tools you'll need will be this Phillips head screwdriver as well as some pliers. Underneath the stick, you'll see this small plate, and that's for easy access to the bottom of the lever. After opening it up, go ahead and grab your bat top as well as one of the actuators. I'm not sure which actuator is the best for me, but I just went with the 60mm one. But you can experiment with either one and see how you like the different tension. Then go ahead and get the dust cover and place the bat top through the hole. Then place the bat top and dust cover through the top hole, and you may need a bit of extra force to get it through the actuator, just make sure it doesn't fall out. And alternatively, you can place the bat top and dust cover in first, then the actuator afterwards through the bottom. Finally, place the E-clip on the actuator and use some pliers to clip it down to the bat top, and that way it secures everything down. Before we get into the overview, I wanted to highlight a big quality issue. Underneath the panels is quite a bit of dust, and this was present before I started playing on it, and some are even in flakes. I believe this could be from when they drilled holes for the glass panel, however this should have been dealt with sooner, before release. If you get an art print panel or the default black panel, you won't see this, but I'll show you how to open it up and clean it later in the video. Another issue is that for these menu buttons, some of them aren't seated properly and have a bit of wiggle to them. This isn't a huge issue as the cable wiggle shouldn't mess with the other cables or detach from the button itself, but at the high end, this could bother you. Alright, let's get into the features of this controller. Obviously, the main benefit is the double movement inputs. As for legality and Tekken, I couldn't find a whole lot of info except from the 2023 EVO regulations that stated the stick needed to be bound to the left analog stick and the direction buttons needed to be bound to the D-pad. The FightBox website provides a diagram of this being done, but the stick came with these inputs flipped as the lever was bound to the D-pad and the directional buttons were bound to the left analog stick. I'm not sure how strict the rulings are, and it may just require that they're at least split between the two, but this is an easy fix which I'll show you how to do in the web configurator section. The cross-up can be beneficial in other games like Street Fighter and Anime Fighters, but for Street Fighter, you can't have double movement inputs even if they're split between 2 forms of movement on an arcade stick. Alternatively, you can map them to things like L3 and R3 within the web configurator, which I have set for drive impact and parry, and I disabled these 2 extra buttons as that's the easiest layout for me to set up for Street Fighter. For anime fighters like Guilty Gear, you can bind it to buttons like the dash button, Roman cancel, faultless defense, or whatever you may prefer. Just you'll likely need to change these to other buttons within the web configurator, that way they can actually be mapped to those functions within the game. For the menu buttons, they're not advertised as SANWA buttons and they're just some generic clicky buttons. But at the very least, it's not the worst since they are just menu buttons and they're not going to see a whole lot of use in game. For the face buttons, the black buttons do seem to be genuine SANWA buttons. If you compare them to the original Razer Panthera SANWA buttons, everything does seem to check out. Even on genuine buttons, the text placements can be a bit varied, but it does seem like the FightBox SANWA buttons are genuine. For the lever, this is the 309MJ NewHelpMe lever, which is regarded as a very solid beginner option for Korean levers. The website says it has the NewHelpMe DX bobbin, and the DX upgrade makes it so that there's minimal shaft spin compared to the original NewHelpMe lever, and this can add stability, but it does feel a bit tighter. At the bottom, you can see that the micro switches are the correct model, so this is likely an official NewHelpMe lever. Let's go over how to disassemble it. If you've already assembled the Korean lever, you'll want to open the small panel back up, and from there, use a flathead screwdriver and place it in this gap on the E-clip to pry it off. Afterwards, you'll want to get a flat object to press through 6 of these small holes. I recommend using an Allen key as the end is flat and avoids scratching. The top rubber screw is blocked off by the USB port, so you need to unscrew it and move it out the way. Then with the Allen key, go ahead and press out the rubber screw to the bottom. Then once you've done that, you can go ahead and flip it over and pull it out. For some of them, the bottom of the rubber screw may be stuck inside, so make sure to pull that out too. If this happens, just place the top part into the bottom part. Don't push it all the way like I did, and just do it partially. Once all the screws are out, you can lift the top panel. The cable connectors are bent, and this is to fit the buttons within the low profile case. To the left, you can see the mounting block for the levers. And at the bottom, you can see the GP2040CE Advanced Breakout Board. This board allows it to be used natively on PC and Switch without adapters. For the PS4, it'll work on all games, but will disconnect after 8 minutes. But for the PS5, it only works for fighting games, and will also disconnect after 8 minutes. If you want to avoid disconnections on the PS4 and PS5, an additional adapter is needed, unless you purchase the FightBox with the Brook board. A key difference between the board here and the one advertised is that the website shows a board with screw terminals, but these are all wired by pins with DuPont connectors. If you're taking out any of the buttons, you can press this little tab and it'll make it so that the quick disconnect pulls off easier. If you opted to print your own art and got the clear panel, then you'll want to place the art between the two layers of acrylic. The hole for the lever is bigger than the 30mm holes for the buttons, so it's likely that you'll be able to fit even full collar Korean levers through, although I'm not entirely sure as I haven't measured it and I'm not sure of the height specifications. To fix the left analog stick and D-pad being swapped issue, first head to the web configurator by holding start when you plug in your controller. Then go to this URL that you see on screen. After that, go to the configuration tab and save a copy of your current configuration. That way if anything goes wrong, you can always load your file and revert to default settings. Then go back to the configuration tab, pin mappings, then copy these settings. If you also play Street Fighter and want to copy my layout, copy my profile 1 settings and save the changes. If you play multiple games and want to swap between layouts, go to the settings tab and scroll to the bottom. There you can set up a button combination for each of your profiles. Here I have my 2, then go ahead and set the rest to no action. If you're worried for tournament legality not allowing for multiple profiles, then press the lock hotkey slider at the bottom right. Once you've made all your changes, save them and click reboot at the top right, then press controller. After that, you should be good to go, and if you ever want to make further changes, you can just head back to the web configurator. Now we'll go over some actual use in game. For Tekken, I'll show you 2 universal tips, then go into more Mishima related techniques. So for the Korean backdash, the usual input is like this. On the cross-up, you can take use of this method by holding back on the lever, then alternate between down and forward to get a Korean backdash. The same can be done on the right side as well, just make sure to alternate between down and the left button. Next up is sidestepping. With the lever, sometimes you might accidentally hold up or down too long and get a jump or crouch when you meant to sidestep. Since you have the buttons, you can just press them quickly without worrying about an accidental jump or crouch. This is especially apparent for when you're blocking. You can just let go and sidestep with the lever, but during high pressure moments, the buttons make it so you won't get an accidental jump or crouch. Now for the Mishima techniques, and to start we have wave dashing. On the cross-up, you can tap forward with the lever, then with the buttons, you want to alternate down then forward, but hold the forward input for just a bit longer. With practice, I'm sure you can get some really fast wave dashes, but for my left side, the input is a bit weird for me, so I just stick to the usual method. For the right side, it's the same thing, just remember to press the left button instead of the right button. And now the main thing I'm sure a lot of you want this controller for is electrics, and I'll show you 2 ways I know of. The first method, you tap forward on the lever, go to neutral, then press the down, forward, and 2 button all at the same time. This method can be done with Reina and Kazuya, but not Jin as he requires the down input. For Reina, you can also use this for CD3 input, and if you play Hwarang, you can also use it for JFSR. If you try the previous method with Jin, it won't work, and instead you get this. The method that works for Jin, I also use with Reina as I personally find it more consistent. In this method, with the lever, you press forward, then neutral, then at the same time hit down with the lever, and on the buttons, hit forward plus 2 at the same time. An added benefit of this method is that you can do really easy dash electrics, which I struggled with before. It works the same as what I just showed you, but do 2 forward inputs at the start instead of 1. The down forward timing can also be delayed quite a bit, so you can mix up your timing when practicing. In Street Fighter, I keep it really simple and I only bind these 2 additional buttons and unbind the other 2. The bottom one is set to L3 and the top button is set to R3, which I showed how to set up earlier in the video. You can bind these buttons in game for things like parry and drive impact. benefit of this is you won't have to reach as far for your parry and DI buttons as they're right there, and you can also bind them to things like 2 kicks for characters who require those inputs like Ken. If you set up multiple profiles like I showed you how to do earlier, you can easily change between them with your set keybind, which I've set to start select and R1 for my Street Fighter settings and start select and R2 for my Tekken settings. For anime fighters, like Grand Blue for example, I would just set it up similarly to how I set up my controls for Street Fighter, where I disabled these 2 buttons and just bound these 2 buttons, with the bottom one being L3 and the top one being R3. And these can be used for things like the guard button or Raging Strike. So for SOCD in Street Fighter 6, you're not even allowed to have the 2 different input methods for movement, so it doesn't really apply, but if you are curious, there is SOCD cleaning where down and up is neutral and vice versa, and the same goes for left and right. Something weird that I noticed in Grand Blue Fantasy vs Rising though, is that despite the controller itself handling the SOCD cleaning on its own, and within other titles, the SOCD cleaning for Grand Blue, last input wins. So if I hold back on the lever, then press forward with the buttons, I go forward, and holding down then up works the same. So for some reason that I'm not sure of, Grand Blue is making it so that the last input wins. And if you use the buttons for movement and use the levers for the opposite direction, then the first input wins instead. So I did some testing with the PS4 controller to see if I could mimic these results, and I was able to replicate the same results with the split inputs. So that's the reason why the controller behaves differently in Grand Blue. You won't have these issues in games like Tekken and Street Fighter, so I wouldn't worry there. But for Axis games, I'm not even sure what the rule sets say for multiple movement inputs, so if you're worried, I'd look into that and the SOCD rules as well. And if you're extra worried, just do what I did and map the extra buttons to other moves rather than have them set to the D-pad. Whether it's cheating or not, this controller has really good value. For $170, you're getting something with solid build quality and a good amount of console compatibility. The metal build gives a nice weight to it as well, and it's not flimsy at all. FightBox also offers a ton of customization, so you can change things to your liking. You can choose what PCB you want, whether it be a Brook product or GP2040CE based boards. You also have the option between a SANWA lever or the 309MJ NewHelpMe Korean lever, when many other companies don't even offer the option to add Korean levers. There's also custom art prints for just a little bit extra to further personalize your controller. It's also readily available and not held for pre-order like with HitBox's CrossUp. You don't have to pay as high of a price just to get the brand name of HitBox, which only works on PS4 and PC. In terms of gameplay, there are many uses in Tekken that you can test out, as I only showcased a few possibilities this controller provides. For Street Fighter, it can still be useful for easy access to parry or DI buttons, and while the additional buttons may not be as significant as they are with Tekken, it can still provide quality of life changes. There are a few things to consider though, as there are some caveats. If you opt for a clear panel, you may see a good amount of dust underneath. Also, the buttons can rotate if you twist them. The issue with the dust will only really be visible if you get the clear panel, and you can instead order the default black panel or the direct art print panel straight from them. But it is still a big issue on quality. Button twisting issue is more of an issue on the menu buttons, as the face buttons are more tightly fit and don't spin unless you're intentionally twisting them. You to decide whether these factors will impede on your peace of mind and gameplay. Thanks for watching, let me know if you have any questions, and please consider subscribing. Thank you.